Yeah, yeah, it works. So I'm going to talk today about monitoring repositories for fun and profit. So it's mostly Git repositories. So try to find something interesting automatically because, yeah, I don't want to spend my time reading code every morning. So I just thought like, oh, I'm going to set something up so I can just in the morning have some nice commits and just read them. So, yeah, so if I'm on Twitter, I'm on IRC as well. The tick box because I'm all about PCI DSS. So I'm security consultant working for Securities Global in Melbourne. I'm CTO there, but just mean that I'm the oldest person who can still use the command line. True story. In my free time, I work on this small project, Pentester Lab, so I provide free training, like it's a CD ISO, you download it, you got a PDF with a full course, and you can run through it and learn. It's pretty cool, yeah, even awesome, I guess. And that's some of the exercise. What do you, how do you get rid of it? No! I'm sorry, I'm not used to that computer. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, this. Oh, it's gone now. Cool. So no code is going to be released today. Like maybe I will in the future, but it's like super messy. It's like a bunch of script together with like, yeah, it's terrible. There is like big one class called manager that does everything. It's like, yeah, it's ugly, like Perl ugly. But it's in Ruby. So no repositories were harmed during the preparation of this talk. One thing I was really afraid is getting blacklisted by GitHub, especially since yesterday a guy started DDoSing them. So I thought like, oh, we're gonna fight against the guy who is DDoSing them, so they're gonna blacklist me as well, because I'm, like every day I'm scanning 120 repositories. So I'm updating all of them pretty much in the same time. That's a bit, yeah, I'm that nice. I focused on open source and web project because that's what I do, mostly web project, not open source, but trying to find like bug in PHP code, Ruby on Rails code, because that's the two languages I'm the most familiar with. And yeah, one of my goals was not to use the full repository, but just a commit. Just get one commit and say like, oh, is it good, is it bad, is it interesting, or is it completely boring? So first, why do you want to do that? So let's imagine you're working on a corporate, you do corporate development. Like, let's imagine a bank, for example. They got hundreds of projects internally. And what they do most of the time is that every time they got a release, they're checking the new source code and they do like a full scan with Fortify. It's quite expensive. And like the thing is that if they release more often than they do security check, we're gonna release insecure code, so you don't really want to do that. What I like is having like a what to check today, like, oh, this is this list of commit, you probably want to read them today because there may be something wrong, so they're using this new function, maybe they call, or maybe there's something sensitive here. Having them sort by criticity, sorry for that, and yeah, trying to know like, oh, what should I read today? I want to spend half an hour every day reading code, and I want to find bugs, because yeah, reading code for reading code is just not funny. Another good thing is to detect backdoor. So if someone do something really simple like system bin bash, I want to detect that as well, because you can, like it happens in VS FTPD last year, someone just create a function that does like, that was doing like bin, system bin bash, and I think no one detected it like for something like 2 months. I'm not sure, but like I want to detect this kind of thing pretty quick. With all these agile people, like people doing cool development using Max and Ruby and stuff like that, what they do is that they push code every day to production as well, like Etsy, for example, they're like pushing 20 times to production. So you want to be able to like scan the code and make sure like there's no something really wrong done. And you can't do like, oh, we're going to do a one-time code review because what? Maybe, I'm sorry for that. So Yeah, what most people do is that they buy a license for 45 and they run every day 45 to try to. So yeah, what most people do, like when they do corporate development, it's just like they have Fortify and they try to integrate that to their SDLC, so they run Fortify every day and in their build process, so they can check for, oh, is there a new bug or not. So the problem is that I can't really afford Fortify. If someone wants to give me a license, I will be really happy. Yeah. Anyway, I tried. And so, yeah, so I want to find my solution. So, but why you don't want to do that? So if you have vulnerabilities, if you start monitoring commits in repository, like let's say you got a vulnerability in, I don't know, Joomla. You know, like, oh, I got this bug. I want to make sure it's still working. So with that, if you start monitoring a repository, you can detect when someone is patching your bug. And you can say like, oh, my bug is between this line and this line. And if someone starts touching that, you can detect it. So that's pretty cool. Another thing is like sensitive function. So maybe your vulnerability is just like a little trick in the filtering function. You want to detect that. If they change a filtering function, you want to detect that. Again, if you want vulnerabilities, so trying to detect new feature, most of the time, no. When people add feature, it's likely that they're going to add a vulnerability, so you want to know, like, oh, they're adding a lot of code, maybe there's something here, and you want to see like, oh, they're adding code with a call to system exec or a call to, I don't know, MySQL query, something like that. And same thing, detect change to sensitive function. If something changed a sensitive function, you want to know it because that may create a new bug. And and you can get dollar out of it. Like web bugs kind of can be sold, some of them. So if you can detect them earlier, you can probably try to sell them. Or you want bugs. So bugs are really interesting for many reasons. First, for lols, because you're going to find like some dirty stuff. So I got a cross-site scripting in blah, I got code exec in another website. It's pretty funny. What you can detect as well is that they push a patch to the main repository, but like the new version is going out tomorrow. So you got like 24 hours when you can play, let's say that. You can get, it's really good if you're doing code review, like you can get a list of bad practices. Most of the time people are doing the same mistakes. So if you find an example of vulnerable code, you're likely to find the same example used by the same developer or other developer in other repository. So if you know patterns of vulnerabilities, you're likely to find other code with exactly the same patterns. Another funny thing is silent patching. People patching bugs and just saying like, fix a little bug, and you realize that like, they fix a command injection, but no one knows about it. So if you know that, like, I think that's an exploit pack, D2, they just recently published a bug which was just a silent patch, and yeah, no one knows about it, but they were doing that. So, I assume they are. So what's a repository? So first, when you got a repository, you got developers, a lot of them. You got files as well, and commits. So every time you got a commit, like the files will change. You got new developer, like everything. All of this is moving, and you got. If you're talking about project like PHP-MyAdmin or Ruby on Rails, you got like maybe up to 3 years, 4 years of backlog of commits. So, and it's constantly moving and evolving. So regarding developer, you got like the main developer, they do a bit of everything. So you got like, so for some small project, you only got 1 guy, sometimes you got 10 guys. Like for example, Ruby on Rails, you got like 14 main developer. They add feature, they fix bugs. You got the cosmetic committer. These people are like, they're helping the project, like change commands, fix typo, change design of the website, change indentation, add documentation. And you got the external people, sometimes even like security people, submitting a patch, saying like, fix that. If you know that someone is doing security, that may be interesting. Regarding files, you got like README license files, templates, HTML, CSS, images, and the code. Like mostly in most projects, you can see like the libraries, so they can be like external library copy-pasted in the code, or you got the installation code as well. It's not really interesting for you. if you're scanning code, and you got the normal code, what's it going to be run every day. So that's what you want to focus on. That feels great. So yeah, if you see a commit, you got the developer name, so the guy who wrote the commit. You got the code changes, so the diff, like, oh, new line, remove, they remove that, they add that. The list of files who change, a commit is multiple files change, date and time of the commit, and the message. So that's the only thing I want to work with. I don't want to like apply the commit and check like all the difference in this code, check the new code. I just want to get this information and from that know if it's interesting or not. So that's an example of commit from FluxBB. So basically you got like author, the date, so you got two dates in Git, the time the patch was written and the time the commit was applied. It was a commit to the master branch. So that's kind of an interesting information. You got what files has been modified and like the change, basic diff. So some of the projects I monitor, Spree, Codeigniter, Joomla, Rails, FluxBB. I'm up to 116 now, so it's mostly web stuff. I start doing some plugins as well for WordPress. Yeah, mostly Rails and PHP. So to give you an idea, like based on the last 5,000 commits for all these projects, you got between 20 and 180 commits per week. So it's funny, like, for example, on Monday in Australia, you don't have a lot of commits on Monday morning because all the people in the US are just like in weekend, so you don't have anything. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning are pretty good day for commits. So it changed between, so I think the week is a good way to manage. So for the average commit, for the average project, like, I don't know, Spree, FluxBB, you got like 40 commit per week. That's, under that, it's not really interesting. That's approximately the value I like. For the authors, you got like between one guy, the guy would just, it's his project, he does that on his own, and 140 guys like committing in that time. And the average commit is 200 lines. So if you put that all together, 200 lines, time, let's say 40 commits per week, time 100 projects. And if you're good at math, you can see that's a lot. Anyway, so first before instead of diving in code and just I decided I'm gonna start reading commits every day and check what it's like and see what interests me and what doesn't. So that's an example of really, really boring commit. So, yeah, I don't know. Good luck in the back. So basically, here, this developer just changed Linux for Linux. So if you want to review commits every day and you want to stay mentally healthy, you don't want to read that. Let's just say that. So that's a bit more interesting. So it's what's the name? HAML or SAML. It's a templating library in Ruby on Rails. And one day, one of the main developer decided he's going to add this rag task to just say if it doesn't upgrade properly, I got an email for that. So yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm really interested by. And he did that in 2 projects. So people got that on production on their server, and no one noticed. And yeah. So yeah, that's pretty funny, at least for me. Another thing here, that's a good one because you can see that unserialized, if you're doing a bit of PHP, that's kind of dangerous. You got some really cool keyword like removing str word 13. It's one of my favorites. So the guy just not really a big problem here, but potentially something to look at because it's dangerous. It's using unserialized. So yeah, you want to see that. So and a good thing as well, it's modifying security.php. So the file name gives you a good indication as well. Another one, when I saw that one, that I decided, I need to do that. It was in March. The guy just changed we just add code table name, and that's in the core of Ruby on Rails. It was in, I think, in March. And from that, like 3 months after that, someone published an SQL injection in Ruby on Rails. And I'm pretty sure if I had seen that, I will have got this SQL injection for 3 months. So yeah, I was super upset. Yeah, 3 months worth of SQL injection in Ruby, in any Ruby on Rails application. Yeah, something I want to have. Anyway, so the first part is like filtering, removing all the Linux. So first, you want to remove every file you don't care about. Images, CSS, README, license, the test cases as well. Most of the time they are uninteresting, especially when people only change test cases. So I decide to filter them by default. Sometimes I put them back for some project because Ruby on Rails, for example, every time they put a patch, they put the test cases for it. So yeah, you know that they're patching something sensitive if they're touching certain test cases. Migration script, like to create the database, update, this kind of thing you don't want as well. All deployment installation file, yeah, just like, yeah, I don't want to read that, please. Developers as well, like I was talking before about the cosmetic developer. Like, I mean, this guy is super useful because like the website is super nice, it looks pretty, and there is no typo, like they fix broken English, and I love having broken English, as you can see, as you can hear, I guess. And yeah, so, but yeah, I just don't want to see them. So by default, when I start seeing like name of cosmetic developer, I just like blacklist them, and I don't read any of their commits. And that keeps me healthy, mentally healthy. So yeah, around 5 to 10% of commits have nothing to do with code. So just like, yeah, cosmetic thing. And for a given commit, since like in a commit you got many files modified, you can divide by 2 the size of the commit if you remove the comments, if you remove and other files. Yeah, you want to, and yeah, exactly, you want to remove all of that. That way, you only got the good stuff. So now the good part of it, classification. So I'm going to do a bit of data mining 101, I guess. So what I want to do is that I take all my commits and I say like, oh, that's not interesting, that's a bug fix, and that's maybe a new feature or a new bug. Yeah, because like most of you're not going to find new bugs like that. Mostly you're looking at new feature with interesting function. I thought, yeah. Anyway, so if you want to classify this commit, you need to extract a vector from each commit. And that's not, you can't say like, I'm going to talk about it. And once you extract a vector of each sample, you classify each sample based on what do you know about them. So you get a training set, you learn from it, so you know that that commit is a bug, that commit is a new feature, that commit is boring, and you classify them. And after, you apply what you learn to the training set to do cross-validation or to new samples to classify them. So you spend your time, you get all your list of commit, you extract vector from them, and from that, you classify them, and after you can say, oh, I got a new commit, extract a vector from that commit and classify it. So that's what it looks like, to give you an idea. So I get a commit, I extract a vector like that, and it's classified as a bug fix, as boring, or as new bug. And when I'm testing, I get a new commit, and I say like, oh, it's okay. And no, I don't say like, the magic algorithm of data mining does that for me. And it's like, oh, this commit looks pretty similar to that one. Because where it's really hard to compare two commits, it's really easy to compare numerical value. So yeah, the problem is that you need to know how to extract from a commit the numerical value. You just can't work that out on your own. So you need this value, and after you've done that, pretty much everything is done. Like the data mining is the easy part. Like it's, especially when you're talking to Silvio and teach you how to do it, it's really easy. Like, yeah, the hard part is extract the vector and find relevant value as well. So the first value I'm using is the number of lines changed. Really simple, but like, how many lines have been added and how many lines have been delayed from the commit. Really simple. Another one is the number of words changed. So you got this super handy option in Git, which is -- word diff. So you only get like the words changed. So if someone is only going to change one word per line, it's going to, but for 20 lines, it's going to be like 20 lines of change. It's not really what you want. You want to know like, how many words have really been changed on the total commit. So same thing, keep a number of insertion, deletion. What I do is that I do a rating of authors based on the project history. So most of the interesting author got a score like, this guy fixed a lot of bugs in that project. So I got like a reference for each project of what guy is doing what. I got a vulnerability creator score, which is pretty hard to find, but you can say like, that guy is creating a lot of bugs, so I want to keep an eye on him. New developer as well, someone who just joined the project is pretty interesting as well, because he's like, this guy just joined, he maybe doesn't know what he's doing, so you probably want to check him. Sometimes you got non-security researcher committing in project. So if you know this guy, you just like, add them to your list, and you say like, when this guy is committing something, I want to know about it. Really simple stuff. Another thing I do is using the number of dangerous function, like how many new dangerous functions are added, how many new dangerous functions are removed, give you a good indicator. Same thing for filtering or sanitizing function, trying to give like how many of them were inserted, how many of them were delayed. And I'm building information like that. I use, like in Git, you got two things, the commit date and the order date, which are different things. And sometimes it's because someone is committing the patch of someone else. So that's interesting. It means that two persons review the patch. So maybe this is a security patch because more people review it, or maybe it's less likely to contain a bug. So I use that as well to classify the information. Keywords in the messages are really good information, like cross-site scripting, this kind of thing, and in the code as well. You can see like some time in comments, information about that. File modified. If you know that this file for that project, every time there is a vulnerability in that project, this file is impacted. Guess what? It's really simple. Same thing for new vulnerability, like you know that, there has been vulnerability in that file, so let's track that. And just, you put all that data together and you got like this big value, these big vectors, and you use that to classifying things. So to build the filtering versus dangerous function, Wiregul, a guy he talked before today, he did this project GR audit, which is like, and he got like a really good list of signature, only for dangerous function, unfortunately. So I'm using that. Really, what is most important, I didn't do that at the beginning, is weighting each function, saying like, like echo, like if you talk PHP, echo is good because you're going to find cross-site scripting, but I'm not really into cross-site scripting, so I think like you put a weight of 1 point, and you say, someone at system, so maybe you can get command execution with that, so you definitely want to check that. So 10 points, it's like completely arbitrary, and after you improve your value as when you go like, you test it with 10, or sometimes you miss something, and you keep going. Some functions are both filtering and dangerous. That's the interesting part, like crypto function. Like for example, I don't know, like when people use crypto, most of the time, it will fix some bug, like, I don't know, you got a password, you encrypt it, and you use that in a SQL query, it's going to be really hard to get an SQL injection out of that if it's like an MD5. But sometimes people like, how to say that nicely, screw crypto, and it happens a lot, so you want to see that as well. So some functions are in both lists. Some example like what I'm using. So the bad function, echo, preg replace, eval, create function, popen, send. Send is in Ruby, pretty interesting function. Yeah, meta is here. Some function like, I talk about crypto, but preg replace in PHP is pretty nice because it's used like to replace something, but in some condition, you can get code execution in PHP with that. So it's in both sides of it's in both sides. Some keywords as well I'm using. So yeah, so that's, these one are mostly to get rid of like the boring thing, like punctuation, documentation, typo. If you remove typo, you're gonna get rid of a lot of fix really, or a lot of commit really quick. Yeah, and that's the risky keyword. Yeah, that's about it. Command exec. Like, even if you just want to learn from like what's going on in a project, you just check this word in the message, and it's done. You're gonna learn a lot about what they're doing, who is fixing bug, what files are impacted. So yeah, fixed bug, you learn that from the dangerous keyword. Like here, you can see like, yeah. So to do the classification, I need to know what class each sample is here. I need to learn that. So either I manually review all the commits for all the projects, which is a lot of work, obviously. So what I did is I learned from the dangerous keyword. So I'm using these keywords to classify a bug as a bug fix or something interesting security-wise. And I go through all my commits and I see, oh, if I got one of these keywords, like the red one, that's an interesting commit. That's a bug fix most likely, especially if you got CVE, for example. So I'm classifying that automatically, so I don't have to review everything. To find new bugs is pretty hard because you need to manually review a lot of commits. So ever you review commit and you say like, oh, this new commit is a bug, so I'm classifying it as a new bugs. What you can do is for given bugs, you say like, oh, I got a bug here that was fixed. I'm going to use git blame to see who did that, who wrote that bug. And yeah, that's the solution I got so far. I'm trying to automate that, but that's a bit challenging so far. Yeah, and for the new feature, it's the same thing. Yeah, you read source and you classify them manually, so it's a bit of a work. So to give you some value, if I like in the learning phase, like you can compute vectors in between like 15 to 120 minutes for to 2 hours for 5,000 commits, so it's pretty quick still. If you do that for 100 projects, it gets a bit longer. The classification is really, really fast, like amazingly fast. And so far, regarding the bug fix, I can, without using the commit message, because it's really easy to find a bug fix if you got the commit message. But without using that, I get like a 90% success rate. So this bug is a fix, this bug is a fix, without the messages. So I'm pretty happy about that. And between 50-50 between like the false positive and false negative. False positive are really interesting because if you classify a bug and you say like, oh, that should be a bug fix. Oh, but there is nothing in the commit message saying that it's a bug fix. So maybe let's silently patch it. So yeah, and like using the scoring of like the classification, I get like between 140 and 200 commits per day, and I get like 5 or 10. Not bugs, commit to review every day. It still takes a lot of time, but yeah, that's and. I got out of these 5 commits, I always get 5 or 10. I always get something I'm gonna laugh about. Like I'm gonna show you later, but yeah, not often you get a bug because a vulnerability. It's a lot more work to get like from a bad practice to a vulnerability, but you get stuff. So my tool is Senzaru because like Japanese names are cool. So that's just like free monkeys. Like the free monkeys. I thought it was funny. Yeah. Written in Ruby. For the data mining, I'm using Weka, thanks to Silvio. It's like this amazing Java library. It does everything for you. So I just create my file with all the vector, and I say, Waker, go, classify that. And he classify everything he learned, and after I say, Waker, go, now check this new sample, and give me like everything. That's amazing. Speaking of Silvio, I don't know if he's here, but I like to do amazing Photoshop of Silvio. Anyway, so the good thing is that I design it in a way like I want to, with a project, when you're reading the source code of a project, what you want to do is the more you learn about the project, the more you want to keep this information. So like I learned that, I don't know, yeah, for example, WordPress plugin, they use escape_JS to escape JavaScript. So that's, for me, that's a filtering function. And so if I try to use, to check for HTML entities on a WordPress plugin, I won't get anything because they're not using HTML entities, they're using escape.js. So the thing is that I'm trying to, I try to design it that way, so I can add function based on like the project, I can add people based on the project as well. I got a learning phase where I'm like take the last 5,000 commits and say like, oh, that author is interesting because he was in a lot of bug report. That files as well was interesting. It's really easy, but like I got some value later. You can see who is doing security for a given project. And yeah, you can add function used by the project, like, oh, this guy got that function for filtering, or they got that function which is almost vulnerable, but they're not calling it with the right parameter right now, but maybe if they add it in the future, I want to know that. That's interesting thing. So in the learning mode, I take like the last 5,000 commits, and I give a list of impacted files and author with a weight. Just simple thing like, oh, this guy patched a vulnerability, he got 1 point. You know, he patched 10 vulnerability, he got 10 points. But you got a good idea of who is doing what in a project. Same thing for files. That files was impacted by a bug. You know? Yes, as I said, still trying to find the initial bug author. But the thing is that when you're working on commit, you realize that most of the time, when you got a bug fix, it comes from someone from the initial code base. You're less likely to have new bug injected in the project than to have like an old bug fix. Because if you got, probably because I'm working with like kind of old project, like not my website 0.0.1, I'm using, like I'm testing WordPress, this kind of thing. So it's less likely, like people are doing that for 3 years. It's less likely like we're gonna break something now. They kind of know what they're doing. So an example of configuration, so that's for Ruby on Rails. So just like, oh, that's where the path is, it's a Git repository. I'm only working on Git, but yeah. That's origin is just to say like, oh, that's where the project is. The languages, so you can say like, oh, this is Ruby, so I automatically got my Ruby function for dangerous and filtering. Filter, so all the filter I want to apply license, I want to remove all the tests as well. Yeah, but one is not right actually, I want to keep them for Ruby on Rails. Keywords, so use like the default keywords. Author, so it's done during the learning phase, so like, oh, that's, for example, the guy we are like fixing bug in Ruby on Rails based on the last 5,000 commits. As well, you don't want to go further than 5,000 commits because you're gonna, I don't know, like learn stuff that are not relevant anymore because people fixing bug in Joomla 2 years ago are not fixing bug in Joomla anymore. They probably moved on. The file as well, like in Ruby on Rails, if there is a commit and these files are impacted, you know that it's probably a good, something you should look at it. So just, and yeah, I use Ruby to create all the vector. Yeah, anyway. And then every time I run the tool, so every day I review manually all the results and try to find bugs and try to find false positive. I use the false positive to find possible silent patching. So yeah, so every day I update all the repository. I haven't been blacklisted so far. If you're using the Ruby Git library, it's written by the guy from GitHub, but it's really, really, really bad. Like I had a bug, like the thing wasn't, I was calling like git pull, and it wasn't updating the repository because like, I don't know, they did something wrong, and I had to manually like run the command line and add that to my code. So it's a terrible library. Avoid it if you can. So find alerts and like classify new commits and send me that in a nice report. And so yeah, that's my definition of nice. So yeah, exactly. You got a commit, you click on it, you go to GitHub, and after you review it manually and say like, oh, that may be interesting. Since you got all your commit locally, you can like, oh, just go through the code and after try to find it. But an interesting commit can sometimes be a bad practice, and sometimes a bad practice can lead to a vulnerability. So yeah, it's like, yeah, it's not gonna, I'm gonna say, it's not gonna rain all days. So that was one of this week. So I think WooCommerce is what's the name? It's a plugin for WordPress to do like e-commerce stuff. So the guy thought it was a good idea to, it's not exploitable yet. The guy thought it was a good idea to remove the escape_JS function and run his own. But if you check what the escape.js function does in WordPress, it's actually escaping quote and double quote, like because you don't want to do that, because if someone can put a value, can inject something, they're going to break out of JavaScript and run their own JavaScript. And so you get a cross-site scripting. And so this guy thought like, oh, I'm going to remove it and I'm going to use my own. But he removed the code that was annoying him, and he removed like what escape, quote, and double quote. Fortunately, let's say that, it's not vulnerable yet. It's not exploitable yet because you don't have like, you can't inject any value in that at the moment. The thing that that's going to evolve, and I'm going to keep following it. And one day the developer will want to add this awesome new feature when the user can put a value somewhere, and that day, that's going to be vulnerable. So I'm following that, for example. Some other examples, so just like you read some funny commits every day, so this is hack, and the guy removed like, oh, to do, this is a ghetto, because, yeah. Just, you read this stuff, pretty funny. So that was this morning. So Joomla sucks controller. Yeah, this guy, like, that's actually a bug, but that's not going to be I-rated by a risk manager, but like this guy created this download file function for his website, and he disable SSL verification. So if you can man in the middle of that connection, you can get something out of it. Just like the good thing is that you can see a lot of bad practices, and the more you learn bad practices, the more you know what to check for, and you know that, oh, that guy is probably gonna do other mistake. Let's just say that. So yeah, most fixes are really small code insertion or basic line substitution. Like most of the people, when you see a fix, it's like, oh, they had a filtering function on the same line, or they just add an if statement before, like if blah and return is a good thing to check for. They are really easy to detect. People fixing bugs is like really easy to detect. New bugs are details, like really small details between like an exploitable bugs and a non-exploitable bugs. There is like tiny difference. So it's really hard to detect statistically. So yeah, my approach is like read everything and hope for the best. Yeah, as I said before, working on important project makes the creation of bugs far less likely. I mean, it's really unlikely that tomorrow there's going to be like a trivial code exec in WordPress. Like, does someone has a code exec in WordPress? No, it's less likely to get a code exec in WordPress because it's an important project and people are not gonna screw that bad. But yeah, the more you open to check shitty project as well, the more bug you found, but they have less value. So it's like, yeah, what should I check? What shouldn't check? Yeah, it's not gonna rain all days because like you still have like, I don't know, like 5-10 commits. You still need to spend a lot of time checking that it's actually like a bad practice and exploitable issue. So But still interesting to do, and like you learn a lot. That's probably the most important thing. Like, if you want to learn stuff, read code, and the more code you read, the better you get, and the more bugs you find, and the better you get, and yeah. And you're gonna see funny stuff as well. One of the possible improvement is syntactic analysis. I want to add that because regular expressions are good, but just not enough. But the thing is that I don't have the full code base, so doing syntactic analysis is going to be hard. So still didn't think through how to do that. False alerts are really time-consuming. So with regular expression, you got like a lot of false positive that you don't want to see. So using syntactic analysis will improve that. What will be really good, it's retrieving information from external sources. If you follow PHP, for example, they got this external website where they got all their bugs, and when a bug is sensitive security-wise, you can't see it. Only the security team or the main PHP developer can see it. That's a really interesting information. So I like to see when I got a commit and it's referencing a bug, if that bug is not available on the PHP website, I want to flag that. Same for CVE, trying to retrieve as much information externally and get that in. And yes, support for more languages and platform, Objective-C, library and application will be good. To find more bugs. I talked with someone who told me oh, you should definitely run that on the Linux kernel. Maybe I should get interesting results in the driver, apparently. And the thing is that I can. Now that it's ready, I can scan as much as I want. So it depends on how much time I'm willing to waste on that. So it's easy to detect. It's like security fix, new feature with interesting function. Security bugs really hard. Yeah, still worth the time if you want to have bugs. Bad practices, really easy, really nice to have. I don't know if you read the Taosa Markdown book. It's like a book full of bugs, and you spot the bug, and so that's what I get out of it. It's just oh, there's maybe a bug here, try to spot it. So you can see what people do, and it can be really frustrating though, because you think, oh, I'm that close to finding something and you don't get anything, unfortunately. So if you have any question, have a great Ruxcon, play the CTF. Andrew G spent a lot of time setting it up, and it's really awesome this year. I think that's the best CTF so far, and I kind of know what I'm talking about. Play the lock picking contest as well. Remember to check out the free exercise, that's pretty good. And thanks to everyone who helped me, people who work with me, people from Ruxcon, and everyone. And thanks for your time.